Hey man, I never said that Errol Spence couldn't beat Canelo Alvarez. I just don't know if that would be a good idea. You know, anything can happen in that square circle. So the idea is that according to Errol Spence, and I believe it as well. I agree with what he's saying. Is people at this point in time, he's growing out of the welterweight division, and he has to suck down weight to get down there. We've seen the several different versions of Errol Spence lately. You had the Errol Spence, that was ripped and shredded and vascular and you know dense muscle and things like that. And then we saw the version of Errol Spence when he slacked off in his training, didn't wasn't as disciplined in his diet, and he hurried up and did like a quick fix and cut all the weight, at the last minute for Mikey Garcia, and then he turned around and sort of did a similar thing with Sean Porter, where he looked slightly emaciated during the weigh-in. Then you've seen the version of what he just did with Danny Garcia, which was an improvement after the car accident. He stayed more disciplined on his diet, stayed trained, stayed closer to the welterweight division. But and he looked fucking ridiculous, especially with his media workout. I mean, he looked phenomenal, but at the same time, after the last little body transformation, when you have to cut that little bit of extra weight to make the 147, I think he came in at 146 and a half, and then you rehydrate. You can still tell that just naturally he's a bigger dude. You know what I'm saying? Like you can tell Danny Garcia don't have to do much to make the 147. Terrence Bud Crawford doesn't have to do much to make the 147. Now, if he stays disciplined, he says he's just staying around the welterweight division to become undisputed. But that's discipline. That is a disciplined boxer. But at the same time, I can see where he says what you see is like a 70 to 80% version of myself versus if I was allow myself to fill out to a bigger weight where I don't have to suck down as much weight to get down to welterweight. So 160 is more ideal for him to maintain his strength and not deprive himself to get down to that weight. You know, so I understand that idea. A lot of people was comparing him to the guy that also was in the accident. I always his name escapes me, right? But the movie We Bleed for This was based off a real guy. His name would come to me later on. You know what I'm saying, when I'm doing something totally different. I know what it's Piaz. It sounds like something Piaz. I know that's not correct, but y'all know who I'm talking about. They call him the Tasmanian Devil. You know what I mean? But we know he had the car accident, broke his neck, had the halo on where he couldn't move. Then he went to his basement, was bench pressing, started boxing, hitting the heavyweight, came back and had a career after his accident, went on to fight Roy Jones Jr., and you know how that story goes. But also in that same story, the way that movie, I Bleed for This, the opening act was when Piaz was about to fight Roger Mayweather, and he was trying to make weight for the fight, and he was up in the hotel room. Everybody's calling his phone. This is way before cell phones. Everybody calling his phone. Where you at? I want to say his name wrong. I want to say Joey P.S., but I know that's off. Anyway, everybody calling his phone. He telling his girlfriend all these star tactics, and then boom, they show him walk down there in slow motion with the robe on after he was on the treadmill and on the bicycle with the sweatsuit on. Came down, made the weight, got in the ring with Roger Mayweather and got beat, right? So after he had this car accident, you know what him and his trainer realized? I love you too. Hey, after his trainer realized that he needed to move up in weight, he had his power and his speed naturally was going to be more successful. He's going to have more impact, more snap on his punches if he fought at his natural weight. So he had been fighting at a weight class that he just had been since he was a kid. This is the weight class he thought he was supposed to be in. He had old school training mentalities that would tell him, no, you need to get down to this weight to be successful in your career. And all the whole while, he should have had moved up in weight before that anyway. So that's similar to me to Errol Spence. Errol Spence, even after this car accident, he showed all this discipline. He trained, got his body right, came in focused, dominated Danny Garcia. And he's saying that's still knowing me, knowing myself. Errol Spence says knowing my body. That still was a 70% to 80% version of myself. So he's saying if he was able to come in at 100% and Canelo, drop weight to 160. He said if Jamar Charlo, big ass, can drop down to 160, Canelo can drop down to 160. If he fought at 160, the idea is there's already a blueprint to beat Canelo, even though that was a different version of Canelo, but the blueprint has been laid there. It's there. Not to say that everybody can do what Floyd Money Mayweather did. You know what I'm saying? Very few people can do what Money Mayweather did. But we all know how Errol Spence started to get his fame was by going in there and putting on a performance against Floyd Money Mayweather that made Floyd Money Mayweather say, hey, Keith Thurman, you want your shot at me? Fight Errol Spence. And Keith Thurman didn't take that fight. So Errol Spence knows what he can do as far as boxing, as far as banging, fighting in the pocket, fighting on the back foot. He knows what Canelo brings to the table. Canelo is a very, very formidable opponent. Right now, he's looking, undefeatable. I'm starting to hear all the different stories come out about Canelo, Saul Alvarez, and Arthur Beterbiev. I'm going to just say Beterbiev. That's how I'm going to pronounce it. That's the whole thing that everybody really is kind of focusing on is the Beterbiev and things of that nature. Look, does Errol Spence have a shot? Definitely. If Errol Spence was to go up and fight Canelo Alvarez and win, then that's achieving greatness. That's like you said, dare to be great. If you can dare to be great, you can achieve greatness. Like Roy Jones Jr. dared to be great to go up and fight John Ruiz, even though John Ruiz wasn't a top dog in the heavyweight division. He was a champion at the time. My thought is after Roy Jones went up and got that belt, he came back and he was never the same. So, I would say if Errol Spence was to go up there, fight Canelo, and get that belt, and somehow pull off that miracle and dominate him and outbox him and just be faster, and keep him at the end of the stick and things of that nature, something that nobody really right now can comprehend. That is a bigger accomplishment than fighting a Terrence Bud Crawford. Because right now, most people are putting Canelo at the top of the pound-for-pound list. Never mind the clenbuterol, never mind whether or not Kovalev was 100%, never mind if Caleb Smith was, a cherry pick. I hear all those things. I look into it, but I formulate my own thought. To me, Canelo is a problem. He's a problem for anybody out there, Triple G, Jamar Charlo, Caleb Plant, Billy Joe Saunders, Errol Spence. I'm not too familiar. I got to really look up. I was watching some fights of Arthur Beterbiev. I got to go back and refresh my mind of how dominant. I'm hearing he's too dominant. He's too strong. He's too aggressive. He has too many skills. He brings too much to the table for Canelo Alvarez. Therefore, Canelo Alvarez is trying to avoid that fight. And I heard the same thing as far as Jamar Charlo brings too much to the table to fight Canelo Alvarez, and Canelo Alvarez is dodging that fight. And the same with a little bit with, Demetrius Andrade, where he's just long, boxer on his toes, and, Canelo can be somewhat plotting sometimes. He's better off fighting guys that are a little bit more flat-footed. When he's fighting guys that knows how to fight on the back foot and use a lot of, movements, then Canelo does, the fight changes. He does struggle a little bit. He did struggle, in my opinion, with is Lori Londa. He struggled with Londa, but I think he kind of figured out Londa enough to sway the judges in his direction. Who's the other? I keep forgetting the other southpaw that he fought. Trout, Austin Trout. Yeah, I think he beat Austin Trout, but Austin Trout was another tricky southpaw. So I feel like a lot of people aren't giving Canelo his credit. And I feel like a lot of people just have their opinion. They fixated on it. They make their valid points. But everybody has an opinion. Everybody is entitled to an opinion. And you know what I'm saying? This is just my opinion. Y'all let me know what y'all opinion is. I definitely don't think Errol Spence fighting Canelo is something to try to use against Errol Spence to say he's afraid of Terrence Bud Crawford. I think that's ridiculous. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, anybody that's a fighter should know the difference between the risk of fighting Canelo Alvarez versus a Terrence Bud Crawford. Not to say anything negative against Terrence Bud Crawford. I just don't even understand where people try to make that connection. You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, he's going to go fight Canelo instead of Crawford because Crawford will do this, this, and the third. I don't see Terrence Bud Crawford going up to fight Canelo. I don't even see him having that option. He barely is big enough for the welterweight division. I definitely don't see him going up into the 160 division. That's just like, to me, similar to if, Gary Russell Jr. calling out Terrence Bud Crawford. He's like, yeah, Gary Russell Jr., man, you got some skills. You phenomenal. You the longest champion in that, division you in, 126. But if you move up and fight Terrence Bud Crawford, most likely what's going to happen is Terrence going to put them hands on you and embarrass you and, beat the brakes off of you. You dig? And I feel like that's the same thing that's going to happen if Terrence Bud Crawford was to try to jump up there and fight Canelo Alvarez. You're going to get the brakes beat off of him. Now, Errol Spence is a little bit different. I still lean heavily towards Canelo in that fight. But at the same time, I still think it would be a fight. I still think that Canelo versus Spence, there is something there. They definitely, when it comes to business, when it comes to money, you're talking about Spence bringing in a big crowd. You know what I'm saying? Having that AT&T Stadium where he can bring in 100,000 fans. We know Saul Canelo has the biggest fan base. He's worldwide known now, internationally known. We know that'd be the biggest fight for boxing. You know what I'm saying? Biggest fight, period. But I don't know if it's worth it for Errol Spence, even if he was to go up there and somehow be successful and somehow win that fight and achieve that greatness. It'd be like Rocky going up to fight Ivan Drago. Not so much, because Spence has actually got advantages over Canelo. Canelo is shorter, compact, but he's powerful, man. Pit bull. Spence is longer, reach advantage. I think he's going to fight better on his back foot. But I don't know if he's built in a way to take Canelo Alvarez at this point in time. I'm not 100% sure. I don't have to be 100% sure. These are just my thoughts. You dig what I'm saying? I think it'll be a tough fight, but I think I lean definitely towards Canelo. And at the end of the day, I think that Spence would come, even if he was get up to that weight and fight and be successful, I think it'll just take too much of a toll on his career. And I don't know if it's worth it. I don't know. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments below. Just don't get it twisted. Just don't think I'm saying Spence goes in there and gets blown out against Canelo. I think he goes in there and he has a good shot at holding his own. You know what I'm saying? But I don't know if it's the best move as far as his boxing career, and I don't know if it's the best move as far as business. Y'all let me know what y'all think in the comments below. This is Nocturnal Thoughts. Holla back. Peace.